the summer came too fast, and the acre of our hill was suddenly big and small. 'Twas empty in the winter. I'll just wait for springtime. And I wanted you so savage, as a gentleman in blue, the most famous of sinners. We were silenced all but one. I was reaching for the stars, but the rockets very well. Well, the view on earth is magic. I'll just wait for springtime. Wait for springtime. Wait for springtime. Sunny days are behind every cloud up in the sky. Winter's coming from above and below. We'll be ready somehow. Heaven save us for now. Heaven save us from the rain.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. Brief housekeeping before we begin. We're so glad you're all here. We will have a Q&A portion after all of the staff presentations, but you can submit your Q&A at any point during the town hall using the Q&A, which is the 2 speech bubbles at the bottom of the screen. And if you want to use the chat, that's the 1 speech bubble. Your Q&A will only go to panelists. The chat will go to everyone unless you select otherwise.
All right, well, excuse me, I think we're ready to go. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for our 4th annual town hall, and thanks to Claire for getting us started. For those of you who don't know, I'm Teresa Martinez, and I'm the privileged executive director of the Continental Divide Trail Coalition, and I'm calling in tonight from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the homelands of the Tewa people and Hickory Apache. On behalf of our entire staff and board, some of which are with us tonight here on the screen behind me, we welcome you. For those of you who don't know, we started the town hall event as a way to stay in touch with everyone and to celebrate our previous year's accomplishments while getting excited for the year ahead. Tonight is no exception. Our hope is at the end of our town hall, you'll continue to feel a strong connection to our work and are as excited as we are about the year ahead. Also, as many of you know, we definitely see the trail as more than an 18 to 24-inch tread. For us, it's a connector of communities, cultures, and landscapes that spans 3,100 miles along the Continental Divide, which happens to be the major watershed of the North American continent, and along with providing water to over 180 million people, it holds the history, traditions, heritage, and connections of the communities along its spine. We see the connection to the CDT as an experience that can't be quantified. It's instead an experience that greatly affects our hearts, bodies, minds, and souls. We hope that the CDT provides everyone an opportunity for inspiration to listen to the world around us and inspire us to work together to learn from the land and its spirit, so we gain greater understanding and knowledge of the people and places it connects. Our goal at CDTC is to steward the trail and to nurture, strengthen, and honor relationships with all the communities who have lived along and are connected to the Continental Divide, not just the CDT. We also want to honor all of those who've been connected to it way before Congress designated it as a National Scenic Trail. So it's in this spirit that we wish to acknowledge that the lands on which the 3,100-mile CDT traverses are the unceded lands and territories of Indigenous people, tribal nations, sovereigns, and traditional land-grant communities. We recognize the original stewards of these lands are Indigenous people, tribal nations, and sovereigns who have called them home for millennia and still call them home today. We share our gratitude and appreciation for those whose homelands the trail resides on, and to recognize our deepest respect for the ongoing dedication that all Indigenous people, tribal nations, and sovereigns and land-grant communities have and continue to provide the lands and waters the trail connects. We also accept the responsibility we have to combat the erasure of their histories, their presence, and connection to the lands on which the CDT traverses. Please join us in acknowledging our relationships to the lands on which the CDT travels so that we can begin and build a future with more understanding and knowledge of the people and places it brings together. And by doing so, gain understanding of the long-standing history that has brought us to reside on the land we're on, and to better understand our place within that history, its present and its future. We'll be placing the National Trails Native Lands map in the chat in the event you wish to see whose lands you're on, and other trails across the country where they connect to other ancestral lands and indigenous lands. And I'd also like to just thank you all for acknowledging these connections with us. As we begin to heal relationships with the past, present, and future indigenous people, tribal nations and sovereigns, and land-grant communities, we acknowledge the past because we'd like to amplify their contributions and leadership in the stewardship of the CDT. We're committed to doing this work so that all people and all people's histories are welcomed, acknowledged, and honored for their contributions to the trail and its surrounding landscapes, and to help enrich the experience all of us have with the CDT. As a commitment to this increasing awareness of Indigenous history and incorporating tribal perspectives in the stewardship of the CDT, we partnered this year to create 2 public resources, a cultural landscape training path tool, and the first installment of the Connections to the Land film series. The Connection to the Land film premiered in the Pueblo of Acoma, New Mexico this past November, and was produced in partnership with the University of New Mexico Taos Media Arts Program through a generous gift from Valerie and Tom Armour. The film highlights the importance of Indigenous voices to the future and conservation of public lands, critical landscapes, and the CDT. It shares the voices, perspectives, and concerns of tribal elders about the protection of cultural sites, land, water, and wildlife, and provides a better understanding of Indigenous values, which include nurturing the land and how that might help all of us connect to the places the CDT takes us. We're working on 2 more films beginning this spring and look forward to sharing them with you at the end of the year. This year, we also partnered with our Forest Service Continental Divide National Scenic Trail Program team in the inception of another resource, the Cultural Landscape Training Path tool. The training path consists of a series of research-based story maps and interactive content that educates and informs all of us about tribal perspectives and principles for improving Indigenous participation in land management. It provides a more complete toolbox for nurturing landscapes from the land and its physical resources to its cultural significance and protection. It's a new approach, one that considers Indigenous history first and sets forward a way to begin to work together with Indigenous people and tribal sovereigns and nations in the collective stewardship of the critical landscapes along the CDT and beyond. So at CDTC, I always like to say, we don't just talk about the work, we do it. And these 2 efforts are the beginning of our reimagination of how trail stewardship can move forward, working with the original stewards of the places and people the trail connects. And you can learn more about both of these resources on our cultural resources page on our website, which I believe Claire is placing or has placed already in the chat box. So along with this really important work, we've also accomplished so much this past year, and you're going to hear a lot about it tonight from all of our team that's on here, which I forgot to mention. I think everyone has already mentioned that who they are and what they do for CDTC, but you see our entire team here on the screen, some of our board as well. And I know on behalf of all of us, we know we couldn't have accomplished anything this year without your continued support and involvement. So please accept our deepest gratitude for being a part of the trail, a part of CDTC, and helping us accomplish so many great things this past year. And you will hear about them tonight. A few other highlights I'd like to share is that already this year, we started out 2024 with the designation of our newest gateway community. On January 10th, Hidalgo County became our newest gateway community and second entire county to seek this designation. We want to highlight the work of Explore Hidalgo County Director Christy Ortiz and Spirit of Hidalgo Director Beth Walker, who saw this effort across the finish line. And we're also excited to continue to strengthen community-based relationships in the southernmost reaches of the CDT that will no doubt support all trail visitors to southern New Mexico. Also this month, we launched the first of a series of hikes in commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the designation of the Gila Wilderness. And we want to recognize southern New Mexico as a leader in the many firsts in land conservation. Because this year, we're also celebrating the 10th anniversary of Silver City becoming our CDTC's first gateway community. You'll hear more about the 2024 Trail Days event in a little bit, but we hope you'll consider joining us April 19th to the 21st in Silver City for another great celebration. And finally, I get to share my favorite part of this entire town hall is the numbers. Every year, the federal government allocates funding in support of our entire national trail system. Usually it's around $45 million a year. Of that, $1.56 million goes directly to the Forest Service, our partners at the Forest Service, to be allocated to agency field units for boots on the ground projects and to support partners like us, the Colorado Trail Foundation, and youth corps organizations all up and down the trail. In 2023, $302,000 of that $1.56 million were allocated to partner organizations, and of that, $245,000 came to CDTC. We leveraged those funds and raised, because of you, an additional $1.4 million. And then volunteers contributed 15,971 hours of volunteer labor. That is valued at an additional $508,000. So when you put all of that together, it totals nearly $2 million of support provided by CDTC on behalf of the Continental Divide Trail. But that's not the end of the story. When we add in the 16,062 volunteer hours reported to date by our partners and youth corps who worked also along the CDT, the value of that volunteer labor totals $1.018 million. When you combine that with our cash match, the total value of contributions made by CDTC and partners in 2023 is almost $2.4 million. And if you recall, the total amount allocated to partner organizations this year was only $302,000. That's an 8-to-1 return on investment, which means for every dollar of the Forest Service is invested from congressionally designated funds to a partner, we produced $8 back to the American public. And overall, we matched 1.5 to 1 the $1.56 million of federal funding provided to support the entire CDT. Another way of looking at that is that together we added the equivalent of 32 full-time employees to the federal workforce solely dedicated to the CDT. I say this and share this to say thank you and to showcase the strength of the shared stewardship partnership supporting this trail. With you, our partners, youth corps, communities, and our own cadre of volunteers, it continues to be in the public's best interest to invest in this trail, and one of the best examples of shared stewardship across the entire national trail system. And this is something that sets us apart and that we are incredibly proud of. So there are so many more highlights like this to come. So for now, I'll close by again saying thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your support. Thank you to our entire staff for pulling this evening together, and to everyone for making our past so successful and for giving us such a bright future to move toward. And now, as we look forward, I would like to introduce and pass the mic over to Elle Fisher, who's the CDTC Trail Policy Manager.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Teresa. And thank you all for being here this evening. Really great to see so many familiar names and also see a lot of new ones. So thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Elle Fisher. They, them pronouns. I'm based up in Helena, Montana on the ancestral lands of the Blackfeet. And I'm CDTC's Trail Policy Program Manager. And so what does that mean? The Trail Policy Program has a bunch of different components. One major component is our trail management. So the CDT crosses 20 national forests, 13 BLM areas, 4 national park units. So there's a lot of actions that happen on the CDT. And CDTC stays engaged in that cooperative stewardship model. We also do a lot of community organizing, like this picture of our event that we held in Silver City, celebrating the introduction of the CDT Completion Act alongside the bill to designate the Gila Wild and Scenic River. And lastly, one of the major things we do is a lot of advocacy and education. like Teresa just shared, we have a really great cooperative stewardship model along the CDT, and we want everyone to know about it, not just our communities, but our members in Congress too. So we directly try to connect our communities with the work that we're doing, so that the leaders in Congress know that this model is really working on the CDT. Next slide, please. Some of the 2023 highlights from the Trail Policy Program. In 2023, under trail management, we had plan revisions. Some of our major plan revisions were in the GMUG National Forest Plan in Central Colorado, as well as the Rock Springs Resource Management Plan in Southern Wyoming. With those forest plans, CDTC stays engaged so that the nature and purposes of the CDT, remain protected, and so that we have this resource for many generations to come. Those were the major ones, but we also had other actions such as planning for wildfire recovery and reroutes, vegetative management to support the scenic nature of the trail, transportation management when things are, our public lands are more popular than ever. So our agencies are always managing those visitor uses. We had airspace use over the CDT, as well as some plans to help conserve the wildlife areas along the trail as well. And for more on that information, you can check out our website on the Trail Policy Planning page, and as well sign up for our advocacy alerts if you kind of want to learn more about when those kind of plans are happening in your area. For advocacy and community organizing along the trail this year, we had the 1-year anniversary of the Camp Hale Continental Divide National Monument, celebrating that alongside our community members who really spoke up in favor of this national monument designation, which was the first of President Biden's administration. And with that celebration, we also were able to participate in the first management meeting for that section, for that national monument, which has a 20-mile section of the CDT as well. We also are right now in the process of advocating for an increase to the Outdoor Equity Grant Program in Colorado. If you're interested in learning more about that, we have an article placed in the chat from one of our great partners here in the state. And that is to increase outdoor access for youth and other communities that don't get the access to the outdoors. So to provide things like gear, programming, and transportation to those folks. Next we have the Outdoor Future Initiative, which looks to really uplift that state program in Colorado and put it at a national scale. And as well as the Gila Wild and Scenic designation that I just mentioned, to designate the Gila in southern New Mexico as a wild and scenic river. And lastly, as we've been supporting for years, the Colorado Outdoor Recreation Economy Act that would really help protect some of the iconic landscapes across Colorado. So to learn more about any of those, you can absolutely check out our website to see how to engage and how CDTC is engaging in those. The biggest thing that the CDT was advocating for in 2023 is the CDT Completion Act. So as goes with our mission to promote, protect, and complete the CDT, this is really one of our flagship pieces of advocacy. So the reason for this is that the trail, while it is 3,100 miles long, it still has some gaps in it. And so we have about 160 miles of gaps where people are forced off of the trail into roadways and busy highways, making it not safe and not the most scenic experience for a national scenic trail. So really the reasons for this bill is really to optimize the experience, to make it more scenic, really make it a safer experience for everyone walking the trail, for people walking the trail as well as the vehicles. And also just increasing the collaboration so that we're making sure as the CDT gets completed, all the partners in those communities, as well as the federal agencies that steward the trail, are all at the table and really working together to complete that last 4% of the CDT. So with that, the CDT Completion Act directs the Secretaries of Agriculture and Interior to create a trail completion team of BLM and Forest Service staff. It recognizes that value of cooperative stewardship between all partners, like I said, including stakeholders as well as sovereign nations. And it does explicitly state that eminent domain will not be used to complete the CDT. So it is protecting those private property rights while also expanding public access. Just in the 118th Congress that we're in right now, it was introed in the House by Representative Neguse, and it had a bipartisan introduction in the Senate by Senator Heinrich and my own Senator Daines. And it most recently had a hearing, it was most recently voted out of the Senate Natural Resources Committee, where it passed out, and Senator Daines gave a really great and passionate speech about the benefits of this bill being a holistic benefits, not just to complete the trail, but to boost the economy and make it safer for all. Lastly, looking forward to 2024. The biggest thing I can tell you to keep up with the advocacy world is to sign up for our advocacy alerts. That's not only advocacy, but it also includes trail management, trail policies like this National Forest Plan, and other things. The next advocacy alert will be going out in about 2 weeks ahead of our Hike the Hill that CDT participates every year with our partnership for the National Trail Service in DC, where we advocate for trail priorities. So be on the lookout for that and sign up if you're not already. The CDT Completion Act is still moving forward in Congress, and we need all the support we can get. You can use your voice, not even if you're not on the trail, you can absolutely call into your senator. We'll need all the votes we can get to get through Congress, so absolutely reach out. If your senator or congressman doesn't already support them, please reach out to them. And if you are in Senator Dane, Senator Heinrich, or Representative Negus's district, please reach out to them and say thank you for being such great champions for the CDT. There you'll see some listed anticipated trail management plans. So those forest plan revisions are in the very early stages, but we are anticipating them. So if you are interested, certainly sign up for those advocacy alerts. We also have the Camp Hale Continental Divide National Monument Management Plan still moving forward. Like I mentioned, we participated in. And if there are things happening in your area that you think CDTC should be aware about, absolutely feel free to reach out to me. And I'm happy to talk about those and the impacts to the CDT or the local landscape. And lastly, we have opportunities to join us in workshops and webinars to learn more about advocating for the CDT and how you can get connected to your decision maker. So be on the lookout for those as well. And I will pass it on. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Elle, and thanks, Teresa. It's so great to see everyone. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I know we have a lot to cover, and before I go into talking about community engagement and community and outreach, I just want to encourage folks, if they have any questions, to just drop it in the Q&A box in the chat here, and we'd be happy to answer them at the end or connect you with appropriate folks pertaining to each program. So my name is Liz Schmidt. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Community and Outreach Program Manager for the Continental Divide Trail Coalition. I primarily work with our Gateway Community Program. And for those of you who might be unfamiliar with what a Gateway Community Program consists of, it is essentially a program that elevates friendly trail towns to bridge stewardship and awareness of the trail and protecting the CDT and the larger divide landscape. So this year we had a really successful year. We've made it to pretty much every single Gateway community to visit and have stewardship events and meet with local community members. We supported our Gateway community members in hosting 25 events across 18 Gateway communities, and our Gateway community ambassadors hosted 15 events across 10 Gateway communities. And for reference, we have 20 Gateway community ambassadors across the divide, and we have 20 Gateway communities in total. And as Teresa mentioned at the beginning of this wonderful town hall, we are welcoming Hidalgo County as our 21st newest Gateway community for the CDT. And we're looking forward to celebrate that in April with a designation ceremony prior to Trail Days. We also hosted our 4th annual Gateway Community Summit in November. So during the month of November, we had a virtual summit, including a variety of topics such as stewardship and ambassadorship, and a project incubator where we got folks from different communities to come together and talk through different ideas of how they can elevate their Gateway community program and get more folks involved. We also just recently completed our 2023 small business survey, and we will be reporting that out as our 2023 small business report probably within the next few weeks. We just had a really wonderful focus group comprised of small business members along the CDT that further shared their impact with their small businesses and how the CDT impacts local economy, how we can better support as a coalition. And we're really looking forward to sharing that out and just seeing how we can further share our support for local businesses in the local community. And next slide. And so as I mentioned, just kind of looking ahead, kind of the biggest thing we're looking forward to is our CDT Trail Days in April. It will be April 19th through the 21st this year in Silver City. It's kind of a big year as it's the 100-year anniversary of the Gila Wilderness. So we'll be celebrating the Gila Centennial. It'll also be the 10-year designation anniversary of Silver City as a gateway community, as it was our first designated gateway community. And we are anticipating a really full weekend in Silver City. It will be kicked off with a cultural connection speaker series. So we will have wonderful Indigenous panelists, elected officials, wolf biologists, and trail hikers that have completed hiking in the Gila, and more to come, with a kickoff celebration that evening, followed by a vendor fest in partnership with Gila Resource Information Project, celebrating Gila Earth Day and Leave No Trace principles, and really just celebrating the greater Gila. And then we will be finalizing Trail Days weekend with community hikes and interpretive hikes, including a trail run led by our own Dan Carter. So we're really looking forward to that weekend. And then the weekend prior, we'll be celebrating the Hidalgo County designation as a gateway community. So if you are a potential through hiker, if you are interested in coming down for trail days, we encourage you to come down for that whole week and really celebrate Hidalgo County as a gateway community and Silver City as a gateway community as well. We will be sharing more information out for that celebration ceremony soon. We also completed our second Pride on the Divide this year. So we had a lot of wonderful hikes, community gatherings in celebration of the LGBTQIA plus community. And we're looking forward to doing wonderful events again this year. So if any of you are interested in getting involved, learning more about our initiatives, please reach out. We're really excited about this campaign and really excited to push that through. We had a lot of really fun, inclusive community hikes this past year, and we're really looking forward to continue that momentum throughout the year. We're looking forward to continuing to engage communities. We had a really successful year engaging youth. I'm going to shout out Corey Toribio for working with the Youth Conservation Corps down in Lordsburg and Indigenous youth hikes as part of the partnering with the Pueblo of Acoma. We have worked with wonderful grad students through the Colorado State University. Audrey, who's on the call right now, has been doing great work in the San Luis Valley of Colorado, and Holly Gordon has been focusing her research on the Gateway Community Program. So we're really excited to continue their work and partner with them in terms of engaging new communities. And I know we're doing a whole lot more outreach in terms of our community ambassadorship that Claire, if you want to share the link, you might have already in the chat of how to get involved at a local level and be a community ambassador. We can absolutely share that information. And that kind of leads me to how to get involved and next steps. If you're interested in getting involved as a community member, at a local level, we really encourage working with small businesses, folks who are very interested in outdoor recreation. If you work with local youth, please reach out to us. We really encourage folks who are doing that work at a local level to get involved with our community ambassador program. It's a volunteer-led program that we really rely on folks at a local level to kind of give us, knowledge of where we can better support. And then we also have what are called community advisory committees. So part of the designation process, a group of local volunteers come together and we meet quarterly as a group. So they'll meet with myself and Jordan and Corey as regional reps to kind of just discuss what's going on in the community, how we can better support upcoming stewardship opportunities and things like that. So with that, as you can tell, I'm just super excited about what's to come. I know our organization really rallies around the community and community-led projects with the Divide. So I will go ahead and end my time and pass it along to, who's next, Haley?
Me. Thanks, Liz. Cool. Hi, everyone. So my name is Haley, she, her pronouns. I am the field coordinator for the CDTC, and I'm going to be introducing our field operations program. And so to start, just going to do a little overview of the program. So this is basically the main bulk of our volunteer work that we do. So kind of divided into two different categories. We have our volunteer trail crew projects, which are 1 to multi-day projects that we host. We try to get in every state along the divide. We host them on Forest Service land, Park Service, I think sometimes Bureau of Land Management as well. And these projects are just aimed at group stewardship of the trail. We do some tread work, corridor work. Sometimes we get to build things, which is always really fun. And yeah, that's a big chunk of field ops. And then kind of the accompanying piece to that is our adopter program. And that is what this map is on the right here. And I believe also in the chat, it was just sent. So there's like an interactive map that you can look at as well, and not just this picture. But this is just showing where on the CDT is currently adopted, as well as what's available. And then in black is unavailable, or like it's a road or something. You're just not going to want to adopt that. But currently over 1,300 miles of the CDT are adopted, which is awesome. That's nearly a third, just over. Which is great to have that stewardship of the trail on kind of a smaller level. So there's a few different ways that adoption works. We have some like professional organizations such as Headwaters Trail Alliance, which is based in Grand County in Colorado. And they do a ton of work in the area on the CDT, as well as there's medium to small adopters, such as like a regional mountain bike group or a regional trail association, something like that. We have charter schools who adopt sections of the CDT, as well as some like outdoor organization like companies such as Big Agnes and Packed Outdoors adopt sections in Colorado. Oboe's Footwear has a section up in Montana. So it's cool to have the stewardship of an organization like that, where they're putting their employees out to do actual trail work, which is great. And then the last part of that is individual adopters. So that's such as you and me. This is just a private citizen who wants to go out and do good work on the trail. You basically just have an agreement with whatever agency you want to work with. You go through one of our trainings, and then you are good to go do your own light trail maintenance and scouting on the CDT. So those are our two big things that we work on. And then next, I'm going to talk about what we did last year. So 2023 was a really awesome year. It was the first year I was here, and I think it went great. So the work that I'm going to talk about was between our trail adopters that I just talked about, and also the volunteer projects that we did. So we had over 100 volunteers on 11 different projects. We also hosted 3 different adopter trainings. And we welcomed 19 new adopters in 4 different states, which is great to see some representation. We held a project in each state along the divide, which was awesome to get involved in those communities all over the place. I'm not going to read through every single thing we did, but I'll leave this up for a bit just so we can look at how much work everybody did this year. It's really awesome. Some highlights here. We did a ton of reroutes, which is great. We were able to close unsustainable parts of the trail and construct a new trail. We built some bridges. We helped build some punch-ins to raise the trail out of a wet area, so it's more sustainable to walk through, and hikers don't get their feet wet, which is great. And then this is the photos on here, just kind of show some of the projects we worked on and the really beautiful places we got to work in. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so lastly, I'm just going to talk about next year, or this current year, our upcoming field season. So we've been planning heavily over the last couple of months to get this upcoming field season ready. We once again will have projects in every state along the divide. So if you're in a divide state, or even if you're not, come out and join us. We'll have more details out to the public in February, but I just wanted to give kind of a rough overview of what we have going on this year. And then our signups will open March 1st for our CDTC members, and then a week later for everyone else. And yeah, we're going to have 3 different projects in Colorado, 3 in New Mexico. There's going to be 2 in Montana, 1 in Idaho. We'll have 3 adopter trainings. And we're also always looking for crew chefs who want to come out and instead of doing the trail work side of things, you get to kind of hang out during the day and then just make meals for the crew at night. And it's a ton of fun. So if you're interested in that, please contact me. And yeah, just wanted to show off the photos of these are group photos from our projects last year, and just want to reiterate my gratitude for all of the volunteers that came out. It was such a fun season, so hopefully some of you see yourselves up there. But yeah, please join us next year when or this year when the projects are out. Thank you. I'm passing it over to Dan.
Thanks, Haley. Thanks, Liz and Elle and Teresa going before. My name is Dan Carter. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the Trail and Lands Conservation Program Manager here at CDTC. I'm based down in Las Cruces, New Mexico, near the southern terminus. These are also the ancestral lands of the Mescalero, Chiricahua Apache, and the Piro Manzo Chihuahua people. So again, I am the Program Manager for Trail and Lands Protection, and what that includes is a lot of trail planning, scouting and design, infrastructure, closing gaps, improving the trail, again with the trail infrastructure, water sources, and all the planning and coordination that comes along with that, from our agency partners to local community, trail adopters, and organizational partners as well. It takes the whole family, the whole village to keep this trail maintained and completed. So next slide, please. So some of the accomplishments from last year. One of our huge accomplishments was completing the New Mexico state lands easement through the whole state of New Mexico. And this has been in the works for quite some time now. If you've been hiking the trail, especially probably as a long distance hiker, and you had to acquire a recreation pass from the state land office to legally cross those lands, that has now been reconciled into this easement that was a collaboration between the New Mexico State Land Office and the Bureau of Land Management here in New Mexico. And CDTC, we helped out with that as well, along with some supporters, private supporters as well. And so this creates a permanent easement for the 52 miles of the CDT that crosses through the state of New Mexico. And what that allows us to maintain the trail through those sections, sign the trail, put in new gates that for anyone that has climbed over one of those state land fences, there will be a gate there in the near future. I'll do other you don't have to have the pass. So this is a huge win. Also, just to create a really strong partnership with the state agency, as well as the BLM, and creating that community throughout the management of the trail through Mexico. So we're super excited. That was a long time in the works. For anyone in this world, those things don't come quick. So it was a great accomplishment, and we're already out on the ground, putting in signs, gates, etc. that I'll get to. Again, through this agreement with BLM New Mexico, has been a strong supporter of CDT and the CDTC. We've been able to work with 2 local ranchers down in the southern New Mexico Boot Hill area to fabricate some trail gates, and we've been installing those throughout the Boot Hill and BLM lands, and also through the Burro Mountains there in the Silver City area. So this is replacing the fence crossings and the tetanus gates that everyone loves, or perhaps had their pack ripped by. So crews have been out on the ground just this week, putting those in, and then last summer. The Cuba Gap in Cuba, New Mexico. We've been working there for a working group for the last 4 years, scouting, discussing, trying to figure out how to close this gap. And construction on 4 miles of that began this past summer through partnership with the BLM Rio Puerco office and agreement with the Rocky Mountain Youth Corps. And so they got the roughed-in portion of that trail completed, and we're continuing to work on the remaining portion this year, finishing up the scouting and flagging, and the agencies will begin their planning that they have to do to move forward with the construction on that. As soon as the snow melts, it's been a very healthy winter for snow up in northern New Mexico. So it'll be this spring when we get out there, but super exciting to get some progress and having some activity up in Cuba. And I know there's a question about the Jemez Mountain Trail, so we'll get that more detail later. Again, the scouting and planning, it continues in some of our major gap areas. The Muddy Pass, Mangus Valley, Pie Town, El Malpais, and of course Cuba that I mentioned. Those are our big major gaps, as we call them. And that just means that the trail right now, if you want to have a continuous footpath or a hoof path, you got to follow a highway, a paved section. Usually it's, in these situations, a pretty dangerous highway or a long stretch of motorized gravel road. And this is long-term work. Usually they've remained gaps for a reason. There's usually private land concerns, sensitive resource concerns, wildlife habitat. And so it takes some nuance and time to work through all those issues and opportunities to acquire easements and access across those private lands. But that work is steadily moving along with working groups, field scouting and visits throughout the whole year, which will continue this year as well. And we've also moved forward with some other trail infrastructure improvements and addressing some minor gaps, which is just where we have like a motorized trail or a trail that doesn't really meet the CDT experience or goals. So we've been working with the Forest Service and their E-Tracks condition assessment platform, doing surveys throughout New Mexico, cleaning up some of our data on Forest Service lands. So all that data that you have in your Far Out app or your paper map or whatever it might be, that's going to be updated now and be where the trail actually is. Also, partnership with the Gila National Forest completed post-wildfire condition and needs assessment on the 35 miles of the official CDT through the Black Range and the Aldo Leopold Wilderness. This was hit by a catastrophic wildfire in 2022, the Black Fire, and had some high severity burns, lots of flooding, lots of dead trees in that area, and crews have already got on the trees have already hit the ground, clearing blowdowns, doing some signage. We have plans this year to have a staff training with the field operations out there to address some trail structure concerns, get more eyes on the ground. And I know the Forest Service and other partners are moving forward with other trail work there in the Black Range as well. So there'll be ongoing work to get the trail back open where it needs to be and just maintaining it as the dead trees continue to fall. But I'll say this, the picture behind me, this is a view from that area. It's a very beautiful section. A lot of it can still be accessed. So if you're adventurous, I'd recommend getting out there when the snow is cleared off. And then again, we just continue to improve the trail through infrastructure, signage. We've been putting in a lot of wayfinding and signage, thanks to generous support from the Winchester family through the Winchester Fund, which is an ongoing support that they give us to put in wayfinding, signage, kiosks, and we get those signs and we give those back out to the agencies, to the adopters, to the community members that help us put those into places, put them out on the trail. So we'll be continuing to gather that information. And one way that you can help us out is filling out the community reporting form, which I think will be shared in here. And that's just a form that's available for anyone, adopters, agencies, just a community member, trail lovers can put in any needs specifically. There's a specific area for markers and signs. Let us know how many you need, where they need to go. But there's any other issue, trail maintenance, or anything else that's happening on the trail that you would like us to address and report, you can report that in the form. If the form and my explanation is too much for you, you can just email myself or any one of us at any time, and it'll end up in my inbox, and I'll address you that way. So any way to communicate is fine. And then again, improving water resources, water, especially some of the dry parts of the trail, so the New Mexico Great Basin, water can be a very scarce resource, and so working with ranchers and land managers to develop water sources, improve them, make sure they're going to continue to flow for both the trail users and wildlife as well. Make sure it's not going to impact, people whose livelihoods depend on those waters as well. So it's building some strong relationships with them and addressing some of the issues that might have come up, and just making sure that it's working for everyone that's out there on the public lands. So next slide. So just collaboration. A lot of my work crosses over a lot of areas, and other staff contribute to the trail completion and protection as well. So I just wanted to highlight some of the accomplishments with staff here at CDTC in 2023. So we were able to hire a GIS specialist, Zach Bumgarner, who's on here. He's in charge of our GIS program. It's really grown our capacity to improve our knowledge of the trail, where the gaps are, where the issues are, and then getting that information out to the public through our alerts map, such as fires or flooding, an interactive web map that he's developing, and the state of the trail analysis, and then partnering with Far Out to make sure all the data is up to date. This summer, we hired a seasonal intern, Jake Warnica, who helped Jordan, our Colorado regional rep, with Muddy Pass outreach and planning, but it also culminated in a story map around the Muddy Pass gap in Colorado, which is the last remaining major gap there in Colorado. And so we'll be sharing that story map and updating it throughout the next year. And then also just highlighting our CDTC regional reps in New Mexico and Colorado, Corey Toribio and Jordan Williams. They work across the board in everything, but they are a huge support in the trail completion of just building and keeping those partnerships with communities, our indigenous communities, rural communities, our partners, our agencies, the glue that holds everything together. So just want to highlight, they've been on the ground a lot, helping with scouting and just keeping those connections going. And also addressing, continuing our partnerships with organizations such as the Colorado Trail Foundation, where we'll be addressing the Cochetopa Hills motorized section later on this year, which is a large minor gap down in southern Colorado. And one other last thing that I did not include here is a trail completion page is in the works. So look forward to that sometime in 2024, and we'll have some more information and regular updates on that as it comes available. And I'll answer some more of the questions specifically to Muddy Pass and the Cuba gap later on in Q&A.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Audra Labor, the communications manager here at CDTC. It's really great to have you all in the Zoom room with us tonight. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm up here in Montana on the ancestral lands of the Blackfoot and the Little Shell. As we noted a few times in the chat, we are going to pull your questions from the chat, but feel free to continue to put them in the chat. And if you would like to unmute and voice your questions, I am reading here that you may have the ability to raise your hand, and we can unmute you and and you can chat aloud. So I'm going to go ahead and start with some of our questions from the chat. I'll start with the question number 2. The question is, it was reported last year that problem grizzly bears were moved from Yellowstone to Upper Wind River Range. Wanted to know if that was true, if there were any issues with grizzlies last year. I'm going to drop an article in the chat about some movement of grizzlies to Yellowstone. I'm unaware of other relocations to the Wind River Range at this point, but I will say that we did have some issues. There were some issues with grizzlies and users last year, including a fatality near Yellowstone on the Hebgen Ranger District that did result in a CDT closure for a time. We worked with the Beaverhead Dealer Edge National Forest to get information out very quickly to hikers and users in that area through Far Out and our other communication and alert channels. So if you have other questions about how we get information out for alerts, we have some information on the website. We also have the CDT Essentials webinars info series coming up next month. So
Hey, Audra, just a real quick clarification too, in that the grizzly incident that resulted in a fatality was not related to the CDT. They just happened to be near the CDT, and out of precaution, they closed the CDT. So I do want to make sure, not that we're aware of where there are any incidents on the CDT, but there are more bears in the backcountry. Well, there are more people in the backcountry and more opportunity for bear-human interaction. So I think it's something that we're all very aware of, and because of the increased use of recreationists and the deeper into the backcountry they're going and the opportunity for people just to not be really bear aware, we are definitely being very cognizant of how we ensure people have the right information. But just to clarify, it wasn't a CDT hiker per se.
great, thanks for that addition, Teresa. Great, so I think, Dan, you'll be speaking to this next question about trails being built in the Jemez Mountains near Cuba.
Yeah, so that you might be referring to the work there on the CDT over the last couple of years. There has been some work on the CDT around Cuba, both the reroute completion south of Cuba that I mentioned with the BLM and Rocky Mountain Youth Corps, and then up near north of Cuba, there was a small reroute connecting the CDT into former Nacimiento mine, which the Forest Service has been cleaning up and building into a day use area with some trails, and now it has a CDT connector and parking area. So that's some other trail work that's been going on. And then up in near San Gregorio Lake Trailhead, there's a small reroute completed up there to get it off of the Forest Service road. So that might have been some of the and then several years ago, there was completion from San Gregorio down to Cuba. So maybe that's some of the work you're mentioning in the Jemez Mountains. So at least that's the CDT work that I know of.
Awesome. And I'll jump in here. I'm Jordan Williams, the Colorado Regional Rep. Pronouns he, him. I live in Fort Collins on the native lands of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho. And I'm happy to be here tonight and kind of help with some of the questions. I figured I'd jump in on the next question we had, which I know Dan mentioned, the Muddy Pass Gap. Rick asked to hear about a status update regarding the dangerous paved highway section outside Steamboat. So again, for people that aren't aware, there's a 12-mile gap in Colorado in the Muddy Pass area from right around Highway 14 to 40, 10 miles on Highway 40 and about 2 on Highway 14. And so at that stretch, hikers have to go off from a county road onto an unsafe highway stretch. And right now, it's been a work in progress for many years. Dan has been working on it. I know consistently throughout, we've sent letters to private landowners. We've worked with communities in nearby neighborhoods to engage and try to get that gap closed because there's not protected public lands to put the trail on. Next year, we'll be doing more outreach, more efforts. We're working with the agency partners in the area to put up signage, educational kiosks and whatnot, as well as attending more community events and the story map that Dan mentioned. So those efforts are definitely ongoing, and we're doing as much as we can. I don't know if you want to add anything else, Dan, on anything that you have on your plate.
Yeah, I was just to add to that, some of the other elements that kind of factor into this is the Colorado recreational use statute that's been reviewed. If you're in Colorado, you've probably been seeing that in the news a lot lately. So that's an element that can factor into public access on private lands. And so just really staying involved in those policy side of things as well that can help address some of the landowner concerns and some of the other resource concerns is a big part as we kind of work through the actual physical planning construction side of things. So I think you covered it well, Jordan. So.
Awesome. Our next question is about water conditions in Lordsburg, to Silver City, that section of Trump April. Last year it was very dry. So I don't know if anyone in the New Mexico crowd wants to take that one and make some predictions for this year with weather. I know it's tough.
It's been snowing and raining a lot this year, so that's good. The Gila River,
sign.
there's just a big bump in the Gila River yesterday. So crossing our fingers. I mean, most of the sources down in the Boot Hill, at least, you know, are the water caches that ourselves and other Trail Angels and folks put out. And then of course the range waters that the ranchers have out there for cattle and wildlife. So those will be there, especially if you're, you know, planning the your hike through shuttle service or something like that. You know, the water caches will be out there and maintained throughout the spring hiking season, and usually throughout the summer and fall by just locals as well. Up in the Gila, again, it's looking like a pretty decent year for snow and rain. So last year in the Black Range, I was up there in March and April, and we had a pretty snowy, probably not quite as snowy as this year already, but it was pretty snowy as well. And all the springs were flowing in the Black Range, and there were water sources that weren't marked on far out that were flowing. So it was a really good year for water. Some of the wells have had issues, but the ranchers have got those up and running from what I've heard. So no, it's looking good at this moment. So stay tuned. You can always contact us, you know, as you get closer to your hike or something, or contact the local agency field units or organizations to get more up-to-date information. And Far Out is usually pretty good about user comments, definitely during the spring. As people start to hike through, they'll update what's available.
Yes, and speaking of Far Out, we had a couple questions come in. One was about the map sets and when they're going to be updated, and then also how often does Far Out update their site to the latest reroutes. And so I don't know if Zach, our GIS specialist, would like to speak to that. I know Zach works very closely with Far Out and the map sets.
Yeah, I'm actually working with Far Out right now to update, to make sure all of our center lines are updated and match each other. So we'll have the updated map sets coming out in the spring, hopefully certainly before the hiking season kicks off. But we're hoping to get the center line cleaned up here in the next few weeks, so that available. As far as how often Far Out updates things, we're in pretty good communication on a regular basis. So if we get any kind of closures or anything like that, it gets updated almost immediately. But as far as updating their center lines with reroutes and things, I'm not exactly sure on the process there beyond just, you know, the interaction we have. So I can't really answer that question.
Awesome, thanks, Zach. Our next question was from Greg. Any commentary on how CDT will alert hikers on wolves? Not that they've been released in Colorado. And I think Teresa, you wanted to take this one.
Yeah, I don't know that we will do much beyond unless there was some sort of issue happening. As I'm not sure if everyone's aware that about a month ago now they released wolves into northern Colorado. Well, I'm not sure where across Colorado, but along the divide is definitely their habitat. My guess is if there were some sort of issues, the land management agencies will be working with us and the Forest Service in particular to help us address things as if we would with a grizzly. But I don't know that we'll see too many of those. I think with the amount of use that CDT gets in particular, the amount of people and dogs and other kinds of folks that are along the CDT corridor, especially in central Colorado, and northern Colorado, I could see that being a detriment to seeing wolves, in particular. So we'll wait and see, but we'll definitely utilize our incident reporting system. And I think as we think about through hikers, encouraging folks, to help us track those as much as for just the fact that it's interesting and awesome to have those critters running wild and along the divide. So it'll be cute, interesting to see how it plays out, but we'll definitely implement our incident response and work really closely in communication with all our federal agency partners, should we need to.
I'll just add real quick that Colorado Parks and Wildlife are part of our Muddy Pass working group up in northern Colorado, which is one location where some of the wolves were reintroduced. So we have pretty frequent communication with them. So if anything were to ever come up, we have those close contacts. We'd be able to hear about it pretty quickly.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think the wolves were released in Grand County is one of the locations that I'm aware of. So that is around the CDT, of course. And I'll just go off of something that Dan mentioned earlier, and I'll throw it in the chat as well. We do have our incident reporting forms, but we also have that community report form for needs along the trail, just general needs in terms of signage and reporting from anyone who's out there on the trail. So I threw that in the chat as well to go off of that. But we had some trail information questions as well come in. So I'm going to throw these over to Danny, I think. But in terms of publishing closures, we had some hikers walking through an active burn area in Montana in 2022. Far out, CDTC and local land managers hadn't necessarily published any closures. So is this something that we're working on, and how are we communicating those dangers to hikers and whatnot? Was a question for Danny, maybe, if you don't mind jumping in there. I know you've done a lot of work with alerts and information.
Sure. Thanks, Jordan. Hi, everyone. My name is Danny Knoll, he, him. I'm the administrative assistant, and I'm part of our emergency incident response team, which is myself, Audra, and Zach. And so we monitor a lot of different channels for different alerts that may come up, whether it's a wildfire or a bear incident or anything like that. And we've developed a pretty extensive way to alert people. One is we have a designated map that Zach manages, and that is on our website. So you can see any closure or alert that might be on or near the trail. And then Zach coordinates with Far Out, which most of CDT hikers are using these days. And as he said, those alerts are getting updated within usually a day of when we receive the alert. And finally, this year, we're piloting and launching a new program direct to CDT users. So anyone can sign up to receive email alerts and text alerts. So that'll be new this year. So yes, if you plan to travel on the CDT this year and you want to be aware of if there's a fire or a closure on the trail, you can sign up for that and you'll be alerted directly as soon as we know. We partner and work with closely all the land agencies, and so they will communicate with us. We also standardize a process with the Forest Service. So we're receiving all the information from Forest Service or BLM the same way and able to communicate that out to all users. Does that answer that question, Jordan?
I think it does. I think there was also, I will just say one thing that I think the question might be also referring to. Sometimes hikers are the first people on a scene, and also we may not always be the first people to know anything. So we highly encourage hikers or anybody on the CDT, if you see something, say something, because we may not know about it. And the way the CDT is and the access to technology, you may be the first person on a scene. So I think we encourage people to utilize our alert system. We do have we've worked really hard to standardize a process and a protocol, which I think is really increased. And I think for our agency partners in particular, they now feel like they have a resource they can lean on to make sure that people get the information they need. But I wouldn't assume that we know everything all the time at every moment on the trail. Sometimes people that are out there, especially in the really backcountry parts, are the first people to see something. So we just encourage, if there's hikers in particular tonight, we love to hear from you and let us know that, hey, have you heard or did you know? Because sometimes that's the best way we can find out that there's something happening along the trail.
Yeah, thanks, Teresa. Yeah, so we do monitor a lot of like social media, Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, and some of the incidences that we were alerted to this year, exactly like Teresa said, were from CDT users. And so then we contacted the land agency and then they would investigate and realize, okay, yeah, this is a issue that we need to alert people to. So yeah, thank you, Teresa, for that addition.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think the next question is for you as well, Danny, talking about the awesome shuttle. So any changes planned this year and how the shuttle operates from Lordsburg to the border? From Rick.
No really big changes. We're operating March 29th through May 14th this year. We are already about half full. So yeah, if you are intending to access CDT through the southern terminus, certainly go to our website and sign up, as those spots are starting to fill up and people are starting to plan their hikes, their northbound hikes.
Awesome. And then we do have someone with their hand raised, Katie Jackson. So we're going to give you permission to talk here, and then we'll jump into our final set of questions after that.
Awesome, thank you. I just had a question about the text alerts that we could sign up for email and texting, if that would be available to put a Garmin inReach or a satellite phone number to get more up-to-date communications on that with those alerts.
I'm not too familiar with the Garmin. If it receives any 10-digit number, yes, you would receive those, just like a cell phone works. So if it works in the same manner, yeah, submit that number and we can send that out to you.
Awesome, thank you.
And Katie, if you want to maybe help us test it out, give Danny a email and maybe we can set up a test and see how it works.
Yeah, will do. I'll reach out.
I like it, doing some beta testing. Great. Well, we got some more other questions here as well. This one is, are you aware of any attempts or successful traverses of the original CDT through the Black Mountains of New Mexico in 2023? Defer to my New Mexico folks, Corey and Dan.
Yeah, so no, the Black Range, like quite a few people went through the Black Range this year. It was a unique year because the Gila River was massive this year during peak through hiker season, much too high to be to cross. So people are seeking alternative routes around that, one being the official CDT through the Black Range. So yeah, I heard quite a few people that hiked through there and enjoyed it. Heard some wolves. It is slow going in sections because of the blowdown. There's some severe flooding in some of the canyon sections of trail, but it is passable. I was in there hiked through it all this spring as well. It's just be prepared to take your time and be safe around potential blowdowns.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. So we got another question here. It seems like the CDT caters to through hikers. I'm section hiking and finding many services unavailable if I'm in an area during a time when through hikers are gone. Suggestions for getting by? I think that's a really good question for through hikers. I'll throw it out to who wants to take that one. Maybe Liz?
I mean, I'll start out and then maybe give Danny and Audra a chance to think about things that I'm forgetting. I will say that while it seems like we cater to through hikers, we definitely recognize all hikers. And in particular, I think I'd love to learn more of your experience, one, just so that we can make sure we're doing a better job of making sure you feel welcomed in that way. But two, I would say that, I think communities in particular, our gateway communities, are really understanding that hikers aren't just coming through at one time. And I think it's an educational opportunity that we're working with them on. I know Liz and Claire, who work really closely with our gateway communities and our community ambassadors, those local community ambassadors in particular, helping people see that this can be a more consistent opportunity. And I think a lot of the work we're also doing this year, Liz talked about the 35 events that we're doing with Gateway Communities. This coming year, we're going to be doing even more. We have hikes celebrating the Gila Wilderness Centennial. We've got a lot of community stewardship events, and I think the more we can understand how to better provide information to communities and businesses of the things that people need, especially if you're section hiking or weekend hiking, that will just help us continue to increase awareness about all those kind of things that help make your section hike successful and enjoyable and fun. And I would personally tell you that I think the best way to through hike the CDT is actually to section hike the CDT, because you get to pick the best times of year to actually be in places and not have to chase, run from fire or chase the best route because of snow, or chase the seasons. And I'm really, I think it's the best way to experience what the trail has to offer. So I hope you're having a great hike, and just let us know how we can, things that you're running into, so we can do a better job at educating and creating awareness.
Yeah, and I'll just, oh, sorry, go ahead, Audra.
I think I know what you're going to talk about, Danny. Go for it.
I would just add, that's certainly something on our radar as well. This year, we're going to be launching a register your hike form. And that will just give us a better idea of where people are hiking. We know that most of our CDT hikers are day users and section hikers. Through hikers make up a really small percentage of people that use the CDT, and we just want to be able to track that better. And then as far, I don't know if your question related to the Southern Terminus shuttle, we do kind of run that during, I guess, what you would call through hiking season. But if you want to use it outside of those dates, please contact us. I think my email was posted in there, info@continentaldividetrail, continentaldividetrail.org, excuse me. Contact me and we'll set you up with a local driver in the Southern Terminus and to get you the Southern Terminus safely. Audra, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I guess I would just also encourage folks to just reach out if there's a particular community that you're going to be traveling through and you'd like some local intel. Danny and I are currently working on the 4th revision of CDTC's hiking guide too. We had some great work done on that with a through hiker working with us in the fall. And so just know that we are open to that information coming from you so that we can also serve other section hikers like yourself better. So
and I'll just add one last thing related to this. Sorry. I really appreciate this question, Melanie. And just to reiterate what Danny said, like through hikers are like by percentage the smallest probably user group, but they're very visible user group, and so there's a lot of attention given to them from the public and from agencies and stuff. But something we really focus on like trail completion planning purposes through the optimal location review is putting the trail in a location that meets the CDT experience and what a scenic trail is supposed to be, which is usually what like day hikers and section hikers, they go out there to have the divide experience, not just to get from point A to point B, maybe in the most efficient way. So we really take into that user experience from the section and the day hikers when we're planning out a trail and putting it where, it's going to be a destination worthy place for, those that just want to come out for a shorter period of time and immerse themselves in the divide. So.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback off of that too. In terms of additional resources, we will be having some CDT essential webinars that we were going to highlight at the end here. I know as kind of takeoffs, and again, not just for through hikers, but for section hikers as well. And we'll be having a bunch of other CDTC staff and supporters on those calls to answer some of those more specific questions. If you have specific needs on different sections of the trail and have that information, we're also going to be having trail ambassadors this year. That's another program to provide information along the trail, and Audra's running that program. So if you want to learn more, there's opportunities to be part of the trail community without just being a through hiker as well, which is great. And so a couple more questions here. I think this one's for Teresa. How much federal funding does the coalition receive each year? So Lauren or Teresa.
Yeah, it kind of varies. So I mentioned in my opening remarks that the entire federal or the Forest Service, which is the lead national partner for the lead agency for the CDT, receives $1.56 million in total from congressionally allocated funds. Those funds then get usually sent out. Most of those funds, 90% of them, get sent to agency field units across all the 3 federal agencies, the Park Service, BLM, and the Forest Service. And then there's a small little portion of that that's carved out for partners like CDTC, Colorado Trail Foundation, et cetera. So this last year, in our Forest Service challenge cost share, which we do have, it was $45,000. And then we also had an additional around $18,000 from the BLM. But those numbers can vary every year, but it really is only about 15 to 20% of our overall budget. And that's by design. You know, we feel very strongly about the opportunity we have to leverage and demonstrate the power of the shared stewardship, both in the volunteer components and then also in the kind of other funding that we raise, which predominantly is through other kinds of sources, whether it's foundations, state grants. Like we have a lot of funding coming in from the New Mexico Trails Plus grant, that kind of stuff. So we try to really maintain a very diverse funding profile. And at the same time, as our budget grows, we also do have a small increase every year with that federal funding, because as our funding grows, as our budget grows, you know, we need that federal funding to still be in that 15 to 20% range. So it's never going to be more than that, my guess is, because we like it that way. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, numbers are fun. And then in terms of the shuttle getting delayed, we had a question about that. And what if you miss it because you're on a plane that gets bumped back? Danny put his information there in the chat, and definitely will be able to help you out there with any issues, because we know that kind of stuff comes up. So that is, I think, the end of our questions as we currently have them from the Q&A and chat. I don't think we're missing anything else. But feel free, if there are any last minute additions, to add those in there. And then we do have some other ways to stay in touch here, of course, on the slide, through our website, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Reddit. Lots of options. Anything else from staff? Maybe we could throw in those essentials webinars as well for people in February and 20th and 22nd, if we haven't already.
Yeah, I think we have one last hand raised. I don't know if we want to answer that question since the hand is raised.
Oh, we do. Yeah, we could get them to come off chat or come off of mute.
You should be receiving a request to unmute, and that will allow you to ask your question.
Technology. And John, we can follow up with you too afterwards. I know we had some additional information for you, so no worries there. We can send you an email afterwards. So yeah, well, thank you everybody for coming out. Any final words from the staff?
Yeah, I'll just say thanks, Jordan, for guiding the questions, and thanks everyone. We had somebody asked a question of how many people were on here. It was 107 people. We are so grateful that you guys gave us an hour of your time on Wednesday evening to learn more about the work that we're doing. And again, we just really appreciate all the support you've had, and we really do hope to get to see you out on the trail this year, whether it's a at an event, while you're hiking, while you're doing volunteer work, or maybe we just happen to run into you at a sign. So we look forward to seeing you, and always feel free to reach out to us and all of us here on the team. And thanks again for sharing your evening with us. We really appreciate it. Have a great night.